Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I know. I hope so. It would be real nice. And with Star Wars, they're getting a lot back to physical again. But what I just described is really what there is a little bit of a conundrum in there, which is in the old days, you did a year or two of pre-production to make the big movies, and then you didn't do that much post-production. That the whole financial model and everything of the big movie has flipped to the other side, where you do production first, get it out of the way, and then you move into post-production where you spend almost the most money on these big movies. And then there's another problem with the big movie today, which is when we used to make these kind of big movies, the studios had not a clue what we were doing. They couldn't understand it. It didn't matter what you told them. They were lost. And so they were completely lost until they were watching rushes. And by the time they're watching rushes in this old way of making a movie, it's already, the train's already moving. So I think it was harder for studios to feel as connected to their big movies in the way we used to make it, so that you'd have situations like with Dark Crystal where the executives stand up and walk out of the room because they're like, oh, what, have you lost your mind? Because it was very hard for the studios to stay in touch with what the movie is. Whereas nowadays with these big movies, the studios can watch the cut. They can watch the movie cut before they've spent the last $80 million, and at that point they can feel very involved and be very involved with the movie. So I think that's also a little bit of a problem. That the way we make big movies today allows the financier to have a more controlling relationship with the product. But I would like to get back to it. I think there's nothing better than you can actually touch it, and we are trying to work that way. I'm not going to talk about specific projects, but hopefully. But we've been trying for a while, and it's hard, but I think we're coming into a time where we can do more of that. And when we did our little reality TV series, the Creature Shop Challenge, the response to that was really great. And we would have made more, but the TV channel was doing really badly. Televised evil?
Sci-fi is evil.
Oh. Well, no, they just lost a lot of money, and they couldn't afford for our show to keep going. They didn't lose money on our show; they just lost money. But it showed that everybody loved watching people create creatures again, and watching things really come to life. And so we are trying. But I think in every scenario nowadays, going forward, it'll be what we call hybrid. There are some things that animatronics probably shouldn't be trying to do. Perfect lip sync where you catch every B and P and L and S is probably something that animatronics can't do. So the idea of animatronics where the pupils are being put in digitally, the perfection of the lip sync perhaps is being put in digitally, but where the rest of it is happening for real, much like where the Wild Things are, where we were shooting real Wild Things there, but then doing most of the facial animation in post, but using the actual photographic images of the faces and then animating that. That was, I felt really good about where the Wild Things are. I thought that's a really good way to be doing real, because they were real. They were really there with the kids. But a lot of the animation came in later, but you can't tell because it's done with the actual heads were there. All the textures really were there, but then they were moved in the computer.
Talking about how you feel about the yearning for having something tangible on set, how do you feel looking back at something like Mirror Mask that's almost totally
Well, Mirror Mask is really, first of all, I'm a big fan of Dave, who directed it, and he did it with very little money. And I think it's absolutely beautiful, some of that stuff. And And I think he's got a really good way. Mirror Mask has its issues as a movie, but some of the sequences in there are absolutely gorgeous. And they're gorgeous as animation. They're not trying to grab the audience the same way that a tangible animatronic creature that's really there in space would work. I mean, with Dave's animation, he's letting it be an art form. It's not trying to replicate reality, and it does it in a very creative and lovely way that makes it, to me, a very valid artistic movie. But I don't know where I was going with that. But how do I feel about the fact that we will do right now? We do a lot of we have animation that we do in a very weird and different way right now for mostly preschool audiences, but. Sid the Science Kid is all performed animation. It's not keyframe animation. It's performed, and it all happens there. In front of it's got camera operators, and there's puppeteers working the bodies, puppeteers working the faces, and we do 3D animation as a performance art form, not as a keyframe art form, and that's been a lot of fun. And we're doing more shows that way as well. And that creates a whole different look and feel from normal CG, because it's got real weight and it's got unexpected things happening. It's very Sid the Science Kid. You do print. You do a take of the scene, and then you go, let's just do one that's crazy. Let's just do one for fun. And often those are the great ones. The scene where the character walks into the room and trips on the way in, and then stands up. If you're making a real movie, that's the take you actually use, and in keyframe animation, you have to design all of that. You have to, from the beginning, go, okay, now I love what I've designed. Now I have to make it imperfect. Now I've got to make it look spontaneous, and that, and with our art form, you can capture spontaneity with live action performance, and so that's what I love about it.
Yes.
Oh, sure. Yeah, Cheryl was she's Cheryl to me. Gates, she became Gates. I think Gates was basically her SAG name. Is that right? Or did she? Yeah, I think what happened was she is Cheryl McFadden. I think she acted under Gates McFadden, and then she became so famous as Gates McFadden that then I think she legally changed her name to Gates, but I'm not sure. But Cheryl was very involved with all of the movement. She in the way creatures move, their rhythms, their timings, and stuff like that. She did a lot of work with Shari with body control. Charles, I can't remember Charles's last name, was the actual choreographer who did the Fiery sequence. So all that dancing was not Cheryl. That was Charles Auger, I want to say. A lovely choreographer. And then David, I don't think anybody ever choreographed David. I don't know for sure, but Cheryl maybe talked to him a little bit, but David kind of knows what David wants to do. We would sort of like go David.
All right, let's take maybe two more. You and then you.
I kind of have this weird parallel between Sarah and Katniss Everdeen. So I'm just curious in terms of if you have a short comment on why that story and why that kind of part of character's life from child to woman. And I mean, we see that kind of appearing again, for example, in Hunger Games. And there's even physical similarities between the two characters. So I wonder if there's a bit of a homage to that or in that regard. But
well, I can't comment on the folks who made Hunger Games, whether what they were thinking. But no, it was I think it was really intriguing to my dad. And my two older sisters, actually, and even my little sister was, actually, no, she was probably pretty young then. No, she might have been, no, she was probably like 13 when we did Labyrinth. No, she'd be a little older. No, I guess my little sister might have been about that age. But he'd watched Cheryl and Lisa go through that age. I think that I think he wanted a female lead, and I think he was just trying to think, what's the most exciting story to tell? And he wanted to appeal to a teenage audience, the older kids in the family, and obviously you tell a teenage story, you're appealing to 12-year-olds, the almost teenage. But, and he wanted a story that would resonate with the older kids in the household, which was why, he wanted the David, who's real popular with older teenagers, and that's going to pull the older kids. But I think he just thought that was a really exciting and powerful time in a girl's life, and I don't know how to say more than that. I think, and it is, it really is, and that whole thing of I want to be treated as a woman, but I also want to be treated as a child, and I want them both all the time. Yeah. I want there to only be repercussions when I want there to be repercussions. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of it, but I am aware of it. And I've never been able to watch it all the way through. I don't know why. There are some things that I like in it, and then I'm like, yeah. But yeah, I am working on an R-rated puppet comedy that I have that is also dirty, but it's actually it tells a really good story. But Meet the Feebles, there are some fun things in Meet the Feebles. It came out at an odd time that I wasn't really interested in, and I can't remember. When did it come out? It must have been in the 90s?
Early 90s.
Early 90s? Yeah. Yeah. It is very rude, and there are times when it's fun and funny, and then times when it just sort of arbitrarily steps over the line, as far as I was concerned, but... Oh, sure. Yeah. I wonder how he feels about it.
Brian, thank you so much.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thanks for having me.
Come join us sometime with one of the new projects when they're ready.
All right, I will. Thank you all so much for coming.